If you aren't a fan of IndyCar racing, here's what you missed this week.
In the draft, Santino, Ferrucci, can he get Oliver Askew to the yard of bricks? They crash across the line. Scott McLaughlin's going to win.
If you've been under a rock, effectively all sports seasons have been cancelled or suspended due to recent events. This includes the MLB, the NBA, the MLS, NHL, the PGA Tour. Hell, even the Olympics have been postponed until next year. But critically for today's conversation, IndyCar racing has also seen its season be put on hold. Thankfully, as we've seen on ESPN, many sports have pivoted to be played through the format of video games. You have NBA players streaming themselves playing basketball, Serena and Venus Williams entered a Mario Tennis tournament, and thanks to what is probably the premier racing simulator, iRacing, not only have NASCAR racers been able to keep doing what they love, but now IndyCar has started to use the simulator as well and has set up a 6-week, 6-race season, gathering plenty of accomplished professional IndyCar racers, as well as NASCAR racer Jimmy Johnson and Formula One racer Lando Norris. The race that is going to become the focus of the rest of this video is the First Responder 175. A 175-mile race tributed to the first responders around the world in response to the global pandemic. It's important to note that this track was on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which in the context of IndyCar is generally home to the Indy 500, a 500-mile race that usually takes up to 3.5 hours. The race started off very typical of a real-life IndyCar race. You had NBC's professional sportscasters announcing the event, the national anthem was sung in real life by the Indianapolis Fire Department, and actual first responders from New York City gave the call for the drivers to start their engines. Seriously, the production quality of all of this is exceptional. Much of this race was totally normal too. You saw a ton of things that you would usually see in IndyCar. Tight formations, calculated moves, and, of course, fast cars. It's important to mention that this race is not like a typical race you might see in a more standard racing game. iRacing, which was initially released in 2008, is an extremely accurate racing sim. It uses laser scanning to create the most geometrically accurate recreations of the real-life racecourses, and even factors in how worn down the driver's tires would be coming into a tight corner. Yes, the drivers still have to make pit stops to refuel and change their tires. And iRacing, which is available to everyone for a subscription fee, takes itself very seriously. If you were to try and do things that wouldn't normally fly in real-life racing, you can be banned from playing. Especially if you were to do something like intentionally crash into someone else's car. But like I said, much of this race was pretty normal until we get into the final 8 laps of the 70-lap race. Remember Lando Norris, the Formula One racer who was racing in his IndyCar tournament? Well, the week prior to this was his first actual IndyCar race, even if it was a simulation. And before we get into it, yes, Formula One and IndyCar are very different. And if I had to go and explain those differences right now, this video would be another hour longer. Trust me, I've looked it up, they are that different. But the reason Lando Norris was competing in this race was not only because he's an F1 driver, but he's also a prominent streamer. So much so that the governing body of IndyCar invited him to race in last week's iRacing event. And so, Lando Norris not only raced his first IndyCar race the week prior, but came in first place. Yes, this 20-year-old Formula One driver showed up in this digital race and smoked all the other IndyCar pros. Fast forward to the final 8 laps, and it was Graham Rahal in first, Simon Pagenaud in second, who was the winner of the 2019 Indy 500, and Lando Norris in third. Coming into the third corner of the lap, Norris started pushing hard on the other 2 drivers. At first, he almost hits Rahal's tires, but he was able to take the inside going into the turn, and Rahal twitched for a brief second here, either to avoid Norris or due to a brief moment of input lag. Either way, Rahal's car brushed Pagenaud, which crashed him into the wall, effectively taking him out of the race.
Lando Norris 3 wide in the short chute. Oh, Pagenaud's gone.
The context of this move is important. Normally, it's unspoken etiquette of racers at the Indy 500 to not try and go 3 wide on a corner. If this does happen, the third person arriving into the corner is expected to back out and try to press on afterwards. These cars are moving at speeds of over 225 miles an hour. And it's extremely dangerous. In the history of American Championship car racing, 36 drivers have suffered fatal crashes at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. In real life, it's very likely Lando Norris wouldn't have made this move. But this isn't real life. Lando pushes through, and Simon Pagenaud is taken out. But this story gets crazier. Pagenaud then drives his car to the pit, to safety, And after his digital car has been fixed, he says,
"Let me take Lando out. Let's do it."
Pagenaud then drives his car back onto the track, and against the advice of someone on his comms,
just make sure to not do decisions you might regret or something.
I don't regret anything. What are you talking about? I'm racing.
Pagenaud goes around until Norris is directly behind him, and brake checks him, causing Norris's car to crash into Pagenaud and spin off to the left, knocking him out of the race as well. Now, as this happens, Pagenaud throws his hands up in the air, saying,
"Oh, I was spinning,"
claiming he was simply trying to go to the pit, which is why he was slowing down. But with him audibly saying, "I'm going to take Lando out" just before this, it seems like he very much knew what he was doing. And keep in mind, this behavior is coming from the former Indy 500 champion. But this isn't the end of the craziness. Coming into the final lap, Marcus Ericsson took the inside and cut past Patricio Award and Oliver Askew. Award didn't take kindly to this and drove directly into the back of Ericsson,
On the final lap. Now Award wants a shot.
which resulted in both drivers falling out of contention. But it keeps going. After this, you were left with Oliver Askew, who was previously in third place, now in the front going into the final stretch. He was followed closely by Santino Ferrucci in second and Scott McLaughlin in third. Now, real quick backstory on Santino Ferrucci. This little monster was infamously fired from his Formula 2 racing team after he purposefully crashed into his own teammate.
Slowdown lap. He's hit his teammate again. He's hit his teammate again. Someone.
Then, while he was driving back to the garage, he was caught texting on his phone while still driving his race car, an act he was severely fined for. And then on top of all of this, he allegedly started hurling racial slurs at his teammate. So, yeah, great guy. But back to the race at hand though, we have Askew in front, followed closely by Ferrucci, who is actually closing in and has a solid shot at breaking past him and winning. But what does Ferrucci do?
Santino Ferrucci, can he get Oliver Askew to the yard of bricks? They crash across the line. Scott McLaughlin
crashes into him. And with no other obstacles, Scott McLaughlin crosses the finish line and comes in first. Funnily enough, McLaughlin, who was signed to an Indycar team earlier this year, has yet to actually race in real life. But with this win and his placements across the other 5 races in the IndyCar iRacing Challenge, he ended up being the overall winner of the tournament. But what happened with that crash right before the finish? Santino Ferrucci hitting Oliver Askew. Was that a mistake? Well, let's see his reaction right as it happened.
Oh, come on. Oh, you should have done that.
Thank you.
We had the run.
It was worth it.
Nice try, though.
Close. That was close. That was so worth it.
Santino, you want to explain that?
No, last lap. Last straight. Come on. It's for the TV. It's for the fans. That was so intentional.
I'm sorry, Santino, but that was BS.
Oh, dude, it's a video game. Come on.
It's important to note he deleted this from his stream and has since tried to walk back these statements. Understandably, people are pissed about this. IndyCar is a serious business, even as a digital race. Like I said before, serious production value went into making this happen. The racers involved paid their own money to get their home rig set up to play this, and this was broadcast on national television. To call this only a game is a bit of a dick move, especially coming from a guy who's made a few dick moves before. What I'm interested in seeing is how will this affect the drivers' psyches moving forward. Yes, technically this literally is a game, while that might be a reductive way of looking at it, but what happens when we're able to return to normal? Will these racers be able to remember that it is no longer a game, or will we be potentially set up to see the most dangerous season of IndyCar the world has ever seen? And what about the rivalries formed during the iRacing Challenge? Will they carry over into real life? What do you think? Tell us about it in the comments down below. And if you're interested in seeing more IndyCar iRacing, look forward to TireTrack.com's Road to Indy iRacing E-Series, God that's a mouthful, which aims to continue these digital IndyCar races, at least until the real-world races can resume. Thank you very much for watching our video on the IndyCar iRacing event from this last weekend. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing for more content from us. And if you'd like, we also have a Discord where you can interact with us and talk with us about gaming news. Speaking of, we also do a weekly talk show called Around the Monitor that we record live every Thursday. And if you watch it live, you can interact with the show. Also, if you have a few bucks you can toss our way, we also have a Patreon. which will get you access to bonus content. Either way, thank you very much again for watching, and until next time, have a wonderful day.